Long ago, in the land of Canaan, there lived a man named Jacob. Jacob was the grandson of Abraham, the man God had promised to bless and make into a great nation. Jacob had a large family, 12 sons, each with their own personality, their own strengths, and their own struggles. But among all his sons, there was one who held a special place in his heart. That son was Joseph. Joseph was born to Jacob in his old age, and because of this, Jacob loved him deeply. This love was not hidden. In fact, Jacob made it very clear to everyone in the family. To show his affection, Jacob gave Joseph a special gift. It was a long robe, beautifully made, and decorated with many colors. In those days, clothing often showed a person's status, and a robe like this was not something worn by someone who worked hard in the fields. It was a sign of honor, a sign of favor, and everyone in the family understood exactly what it meant. But what brought joy to Joseph's father created a growing storm in the hearts of his brothers. Jealousy slowly began to take root. Every time they saw Joseph wearing that colorful robe, it reminded them of something painful. Their father loved him more. And the more they thought about it, the more their anger grew. Soon, they could hardly speak to Joseph without bitterness. But something else was about to make their jealousy even worse. Joseph began having dreams. Dreams that seemed strange at first, but carried a message. In one dream, Joseph saw himself and his brothers working in a field, gathering bundles of grain. Suddenly, Joseph's bundle stood upright, while the bundles belonging to his brothers gathered around it and bowed down. In another dream, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowed down to him. At the time, these dreams seemed impossible, but they stirred something powerful in the hearts of his brothers. To them, it sounded like Joseph believed he would one day rule over them, and the thought of that filled them with anger. Their jealousy turned into resentment, and resentment slowly turned into hatred. They no longer saw Joseph as their brother. They saw him as a problem. One day, Joseph's brothers traveled far from home to take care of their father's sheep. After some time passed, Jacob became concerned about them. He asked Joseph to go and check on his brothers and bring back news of how they were doing. Joseph obeyed. He began the long journey across the fields and hills until he finally found them in the distance. But before Joseph could even reach them, his brothers saw him coming. From far away, they recognized the bright colors of his robe, and suddenly their anger began to boil. The moment they had imagined for so long was finally here. Joseph was alone, no father nearby, no one to protect him. Their jealousy had been building for years. Now it exploded. A terrible idea began to spread among them. They decided that Joseph should not live anymore. But before they could carry out the plan, one brother convinced them not to take Joseph's life. Instead, they threw him into a deep pit nearby. The pit was empty. No water, no ladder, no way out. Joseph was trapped. Above him, his brothers sat together as if nothing had happened. But soon, another opportunity appeared. A caravan of traveling merchants passed by on their way to Egypt, and another plan formed. Instead of leaving Joseph in the pit, they decided to sell him for 20 pieces of silver. Joseph was pulled out of the pit and handed over to strangers. His home disappeared behind him. His family vanished in the distance. And the life he had always known was gone. Meanwhile, his brothers returned home with a cruel lie. They dipped Joseph's colourful robe in animal blood and showed it to their father. Jacob immediately recognized the robe. His heart shattered with grief. He believed his beloved son had been killed by a wild animal. And for a long time, Jacob mourned the son he believed he had lost forever. But Joseph was not dead. He was on his way to Egypt. And although his life seemed completely broken, the story was far from over. In Egypt, Joseph was sold to an Egyptian officer named Potiphar. Potiphar was an important man who worked for Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. Even though Joseph was a slave in a foreign land, something remarkable happened. Everything Joseph did began to succeed. He worked faithfully and responsibly. Potiphar soon noticed Joseph's wisdom and his honesty. Before long, Joseph was placed in charge of the entire household. Potiphar trusted him completely. But trouble came again. Potiphar's wife became attracted to Joseph. Day after day, she tried to persuade him to betray his master and do something wrong. Joseph refused. He knew it would be a terrible betrayal and a sin against God. One day, she tried to force him. Joseph quickly ran away to escape the situation, but as he ran, she grabbed his cloak and it slipped from his shoulders. Angry and embarrassed, she used the cloak as false evidence and accused Joseph of wrongdoing. Potiphar believed the accusation, and without a fair trial, he was thrown into prison. Once again, his life collapsed. Joseph had done nothing wrong, yet he was punished. Joseph remained in prison. Days turned into months, months turned into years. It seemed as if the world had forgotten him. Even in prison, Joseph continued to live with integrity. Soon, the prison warden noticed his character. Joseph was placed in charge of the other prisoners. While Joseph was in prison, two important servants of Pharaoh were brought there. One was Pharaoh's chief cupbearer, the other was Pharaoh's chief baker. Both men had troubling dreams on the same night. When Joseph noticed their concern, he listened carefully to their dreams. The cupbearer described a dream about a vine with 3 branches that quickly blossomed and produced grapes. He squeezed the grapes into Pharaoh's cup and placed it in Pharaoh's hand. Joseph explained that the dream meant the cupbearer would be restored to his position in 3 days. The baker then shared his dream. In the dream, he carried 3 baskets of bread on his head, and birds came and ate the bread.
The birds eating the bread means in 3 days, Pharaoh will hang you. No, it can't be! Restoration! My heart is filled with gratitude. I am truly thankful for this hope. No, it cannot be! The dream was a warning! This is my downfall!
Everything happened exactly as Joseph had explained. The cupbearer was restored to his position. Before he left, Joseph asked him to remember him, to tell Pharaoh about the injustice he had suffered in prison. But once the cupbearer returned to the palace, he forgot about Joseph. 2 more years passed. Joseph remained in prison. Then one night, Pharaoh himself had 2 troubling dreams. In the first dream, Pharaoh saw 7 healthy cows coming out of the Nile River. Then, 7 thin and sickly cows appeared and swallowed the healthy cows. In the second dream, Pharaoh saw 7 full heads of grain growing on a stalk. Then 7 thin and scorched heads of grain grew and swallowed the healthy ones. Pharaoh was deeply troubled. None of his advisors could explain the meaning. Then, the cupbearer suddenly remembered Joseph. Joseph was quickly brought from prison and presented to Pharaoh. Joseph explained that both dreams carried the same message. 7 years of great abundance were coming to Egypt. After that would come 7 years of severe famine. Joseph advised Pharaoh to store grain during the good years to prepare for the famine. Pharaoh recognized Joseph's wisdom. Joseph was appointed governor over the entire land of Egypt. Years passed, and everything happened exactly as Joseph had warned. For 7 years, the land of Egypt experienced incredible abundance. Grain filled the storehouses, Fields overflowed. But Joseph understood something others did not yet see. The years of abundance were only temporary. Soon, the years of famine arrived. Rain became scarce, crops failed. Hunger slowly spread throughout the region. But Egypt was prepared. Among those struggling lands was Canaan, the home of Joseph's family. Jacob heard there was grain in Egypt, and he sent his sons. 10 brothers began the long journey across dry lands and difficult roads, until they finally reached the place where the grain was sold. There, they stood before the governor of the land. They bowed low in respect. But the brothers did not realize something incredible. The man standing before them was Joseph, the brother they had betrayed, the brother they had sold into slavery many years before. Joseph recognized them immediately, but they did not recognize him. He wore the clothing of a ruler. He spoke the language of Egypt. To them, he was a powerful stranger. But in that moment, Joseph remembered the dreams he had as a young boy. The dreams where his brother's bundles bowed before his bundle. Now, those dreams were coming true. Yet Joseph did not reveal his identity. Instead, he decided to test them. He spoke harshly to them. He accused them of being spies. The brothers were shocked. They were afraid. They tried to defend themselves. They spoke about their family. 12 brothers. One was no more, and the youngest remained at home. Hearing this brought a rush of emotion to Joseph's heart. But Joseph continued the test. He insisted they bring Benjamin to Egypt. He took one brother and placed him in prison. He sent the others home, but secretly he returned their silver to their sacks. When they found the silver, they were filled with fear. They did not understand what was happening. Back in Canaan, Jacob refused to let Benjamin go. The thought of losing him was too painful. But as the famine continued and the food ran out, the family had no choice. Eventually, Benjamin joined his brothers for the journey back to Egypt. When Joseph saw Benjamin arrive, he was deeply moved. Benjamin had been just a small child when Joseph was sold. Now he stood before him, a young man. Joseph had to control his emotions carefully. He invited them in. A large meal was prepared. As they sat, Joseph arranged them in the order of their birth, from the oldest to the youngest. This astonished them. How could a foreign ruler know their exact ages? But Joseph was watching. He wanted to see if they would be jealous of Benjamin the way they once were of him. But they showed no anger. Their hearts had begun to change. When the meal was finished, Joseph prepared one final test. He hid his personal silver cup inside Benjamin's sack.
Ensure every sack is secure and accounted for. Yes, my lord.
Early the next morning, they began their journey home. They felt relieved, but they had not travelled far before Joseph's servants caught them. The cup! Someone has stolen the governor's cup. The servants searched, one by one, the oldest, the next, and the next. Finally, they reached Benjamin. The silver cup was found. The brothers were overwhelmed with grief. They tore their clothes. They fell to the ground before Joseph in despair. But then something happened that Joseph had longed to see. One of the brothers stepped forward. He offered himself as a slave instead of Benjamin.
Please, my lord, take me instead of Benjamin. He is innocent. I will take his place.
The moment had come. Joseph could no longer hide the truth. He ordered everyone to leave. Silence filled the room. Then Joseph began to weep. The sound of his crying was so powerful, it echoed through the palace halls. Then he revealed the truth. I am Joseph, the brother you betrayed. The brothers were frozen. They expected revenge, but Joseph's heart was not filled with hatred. Do not be afraid, he said. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good. The past could not be changed, but the future could be different. Go, Joseph told them, bring my father to Egypt. When they reached Canaan, Jacob could not believe it. But then he saw the wagons, he saw the gifts. Joseph was alive. When Joseph saw Jacob, he rushed forward.
Joseph, my son, you're alive. It's me, Father.
Father and son held each other tightly. Years of sorrow, separation, and longing finally came to an end in that embrace. What began as a story of jealousy and betrayal ended as a story of forgiveness, restoration, and hope. Joseph gave his family land in Goshen, one of the best parts of Egypt. They lived there peacefully, grew in number, and were well provided for during the famine.
See, my children, the land has rewarded us this year.
Indeed, Father, the river has brought us great fortune.